We are now joined by Bill Messner-Loebs, comic book artist, cartoonist of works of DC like Wonder Woman, The Flash, and Batman. Bill, thank you so much for joining us on the set.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we really do.
And so first, we just want to know, how did you kind of get into this whole comic book world, creative world that you're in?
Detroit, depending on who you talk to, had either the first or second comic book convention in the world. It was called the Triple Fanfare. And I went down there, and from where I was living in Ferndale, it was no problem getting down. You could take the bus down, but then the buses would stop running, and so I always had to call my dad, and he would come and pick me back up. It was the first time I ever saw the Adventures of Robin Hood in color. I was actually meeting people who liked comic books, and it was in the old Pickford Shelby down in Detroit, and so it was not a big room like this. It was a series of little rooms that you wound your way through, and each one had a different kind of comic book memorabilia.
Almost like a theme, almost type?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I went to, you could buy like collections of Hal Foster's Prince Valiant, for example. And who knew that you could get collections of all these things? That it wasn't just ephemera, but you could actually buy things. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So just a bunch of like-minded people coming together and just, really enjoying it, and you being a part of that group really flourished,
yeah, because I had started reading comics pretty much. Well, I can remember getting my collection of Superman and Batman comics when I was a kid, but it was when Marvel Comics started up. I bought the first Fantastic Four and the first Spider-Man off the spinner rack.
Wow.
And I can remember when I was living down south going to Piggly Wiggly and picking up the first Daredevil.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
So
Yeah.
so I sort of got started, at the epicenter.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
the core time of it.
Well, you were just mentioning that you grew up in Ferndale, a town nearby, Warren here, and we were also talking about growing up there. But how did growing up in this area influence your art in the future? Was there a crossover from the way you grew up to what you did art-wise?
A good friend of mine, Will Eisner, who created the Spirit, and his art is all sort of swooping angles and looking down and looking up. And he once said that he got that from living in New York because it was they spent all their time playing on the fire escapes, but on the sides of the buildings.
Oh, right, yeah.
And so you got used to that.
Looking up and down, yeah.
When you look at my art, it's all kind of at eye level, and my forest scenes, even though we're theoretically in the midst of the Michigan deep woods, everything is sort of all at one level because I grew up in the suburbs.
Right. That's interesting. Okay.
So I think that's
Yeah.
that
Perspective.
is a difference.
Your perspective, yeah.
Okay, so you've been working in the industry for a long time. What are some of the things that, in your opinion, have been for the worst for the industry and for the best?
Stumped you.
What things are not going to have people hiring serial killers to come and kill me? I think the decentralization. I mean, there was a point at which you had to go and live in New York, and a lot of people, and some of the guys here, they would at least have to go and live in New York, 4 or 5 years and get established before people would be willing to talk to them on the phone and do everything from home, which was horrendously expensive if you're a freelance artist.
Yeah, I can
living
only
in New
imagine.
Right.
But just about the time that I was good enough to start breaking in, I broke into some of the sort of ground level comics, and I started out in Cerebus, and I was sort of in the second wave of things like ElfQuest and Cerebus and like that. And so because you suddenly had comic book stores that were selling the books, and they were selling them, they weren't renting them. Everything was a little more stable.
Okay.
And suddenly smaller companies could print books and get them sold, and
Like, so more shops, more comics, more kind of
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, more opportunities to see all this different comics and
right.
Yeah.
And so there were suddenly small comic book stores, and I got hired by small comic book companies that were being supported by those stores. So that was of course very good. I could never have gotten in otherwise. And I met Julie Schwartz, who told me I would never be able to get a place in the industry. And he was right. I could never have gotten a place in his industry.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate in that way. And my book, Journey: The Adventures of Wolverine MacAlistaire, made a relatively large splash in a relatively small pond.
Comic book artist, cartoonist, writer, you've done it all. So I want to talk about
All of it.
all of the stuff.
Every single aspect
Every bit.
of the comic. I have penciled, inked, lettered, edited, and but I unfortunately didn't do all those at once.
Right. Well, it's probably why you ended up winning this award, is because you've done it all. In 2017, you won the Bill Finger Award, which is a man who, unfortunately, due to circumstances, did not get the credit that he deserved on creating Batman. No doubt about it. You and Jack Kirby both won it in 2017. Can you take us back to that day and that experience of sharing the stage and having that moment?
It was very, very exciting. And it was very exciting because so many of my friends had shown up for this. A lot of my friends live in California, and so they had flown me in to do this.
Yeah.
And San Diego is an enormously overwhelming experience, especially if you live in Howell, Michigan. But in between the convention center and the hotel where we were staying, which was about 2 blocks, I was actually passing more people than live in Howell, Michigan. And in the 10 years since I had been back to the San Diego Comic-Con, it had grown enormously larger. I was sort of blinded and deafened and stagger into this place, but then then you're around your friends, and then you could be relaxing, and it was very nice. I got to meet all of Jack's friends. It was, the idea is the Bill Finger Award is given to one living cartoonist and one who has passed on, and I was the living one.
it's such an honor, right?
Yeah, it was, and I got to meet Jack, but I mostly got to meet Jack sort of having to shout at him at conventions.
Like, hey, Jack.
Yeah, and well, no, he would be down here talking to people, and he had sort of a low, gravelly voice, and but I remember him saying that the next big wave of things would be people doing comic books for old people. And I thought about it a couple of years later, and he's right, because we're all now all old, and people are making comics for us.
Sure. Well, you mentioned that when last time you were in San Diego Comic-Con was 10 years before you won that award. Now, this is the 10th year anniversary of the Great Lakes Comic Convention, and you were the first guest that they were able to book back in the day when it was at VFW halls and all those things. How about the growth here? What do you think about what this has become?
I think Mike has done just an enormously terrific job, and so many of the conventions are just completely taken over by wrestlers, and old TV stars and that kind of thing. And I have nothing against old TV stars, but you know, it's nice to actually have a convention which is centered around comic books.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that was one of the things that I thought I would do. If I had any small celebrity, I could go to these smaller conventions and see if I can help them grow.
Yeah.
And at least in this case, I was actually right.
Right.
So seldom are those schemes of mine actually successful. But Mike really ran with this place, and it's really great. I mean, it's
huge.
No,
It's
it
true,
really
it's
is.
massive,
It is.
yeah.
It's just, you know,
Yeah.
even us, because we've been here for this is our 4th year now. You know, it's still in this building, but each year I feel like day 1 gets a little more people. Day 2, these are even more people. And like you said, he does have a couple WWE stars, you know, like Ted DiBiase. And this year, you know, he's got Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, William Catt. You know, it's nice to have a little bit of it for everyone. But like you said, just keeping kind of the core principle of the comics and the superheroes and what really, you know, it's called a comic convention for that reason, you know?
and that's, you know, I mean, I was sitting at one of the dinners, and I realized I'm sitting next to the greatest American hero,
Right?
and
Yeah.
on one side, and I was sitting next to Steranko on the other side.
That's the one place you can really bring
Yeah.
everyone together.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So to kind of wrap it up here, you know, it's the 10th, like we said, it's the 10th year anniversary. What's been your favorite memory over these past 10 years, being at this event and attending it all these years?
Well, weirdly enough, I was about 2 years ago. I have a little sciatica in this leg. It's part of one of the joys of growing old, and the result being that you get a little sharp pain and then your leg goes numb. And as I was starting to exit my booth, and I was having to walk by everybody else's booth and try to get out, and I hit some electrical cords, and my leg gave me a stab of pain, and I went numb, and I fell sideways into somebody's display.
Oh no.
And I'm like, and it makes an enormous. All these things are all made up of very thin, loud steel, and so I'm wallowing here in somebody else's comic book display, and I finally get upright. And one of the things about this is that because I'm now of a certain age, people think you either had a stroke or a heart attack, which is not the case. I get back on my feet, and everybody say, "Sit down, Bill. Sit down. You don't want to strain yourself." And so all the Wonder Women from the cosplay, short Wonder Women, tall Wonder Women, and say, "Yes, Bill, just sit down." And so they sort of surround me, and they keep me in my chair so I won't. And that's what I remember, being smothered by Wonder Woman. That's another thing that you only happens in the Great Lakes Comic Con.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know it's a character that you drew, you know, a bunch of
Yeah.
times or wrote comic books for. So, you know, just looking up, you're like, hey, it's
Yeah.
all look familiar.
Incredible.
Well, awesome. You know, Bill, we appreciate,
Yeah.
you know, being here on set with us and talking to us. And
Sure.
Thank you so much. And when we come back, we're going to have more coverage of TV Awards coverage of the Great Lakes Comic Convention.